guys, I'm back again and I'm here to do my Normandy Book Club's long list video. Now, this year has just been just as weird as last year in the sense that we've had to do all of our book club meetings, of course, on Zoom. So that has made it kind of go up and down in the sense where sometimes we have a lot of people and sometimes we have, just like maybe 4 or 5 people. So we've had a very interesting voting, this year. So we are 13 in my book club here in Normandy, and basically to vote, each person has to suggest 2 books each, and then we pile them onto one list, and that's the list I'm going to be talking about today. And then we vote in the last meeting, and then we come out with our 7 books for the following school year, because we read our books in this book club between September and June, and then we have holiday breaks in between. That's why we only do 7 books. So let's get started. I hope this won't be too long. We'll try to do this in one concise video, but you never know. Okay, first on the list is The Vanishing Half. Okay, so y'all don't need me to talk about that. Y'all already know about The Vanishing Half. Very popular book. It's currently on the Women's Prize shortlist, and it's a book that talks about passing. Of course, popular. A lot of people have already read it, so you will see in my next video if it actually made it to the cut. Next book on the list is The Kinship of Secrets by Eugenia Kim. I'd never heard of this book before, so I had to, of course, go and look this one up. And this is the riveting story of 2 sisters, one raised in the United States, the other in South Korea, and the family that bound them together even as the Korean War kept them apart. In 1948, Na-jin and Calvin Cho, with their young daughter Mirin, traveled from South Korea to the United States in search of new opportunities. Okay, that one sounds like it could be actually really, really good. It's really funny though. I don't think I've seen anybody on Bookstagram talk about this one, nor have I seen it on BookTube, but maybe somebody's talked about it and I've just missed that video. There's just so many videos to try to keep up with. So that was number 2 on the list. Number 3 on the list is Hammond by Maggie O'Farrell. Now, Hammond is another book that's very, very popular. When it came out, tons of people were talking about it. This one, Hammond, is a luminous portrait of a marriage. At its heart, the loss of a beloved child. Warwickshire in the 1580s. Agnes is a woman as feared as she is sought after for her unusual gifts. She settles with her husband in Henley Street, Stratford, and has 3 children, a daughter, Susanna, and then twins, Hamnet and Judith. The boy Hamlet dies in 1596, aged 11. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so yeah, so that's that story. I'm kind of curious about this one because I've heard nothing but, oh my God, beautiful writing, fantastic. So yeah, I would be kind of interested in seeing more about this particular one. I would think that it would be something that would be interesting to talk about in a book club. Number 4 on the list is The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex. Okay, this book, I don't know why this book is on. I don't know if anybody in here has actually read this particular book, but I'm not really feeling this one. I'm just not sure if this is really book club material. In my opinion, it says, inspired by a haunting true story, a gorgeous and atmospheric novel about the mysterious disappearance of 3 lighthouse keepers from a remote tower miles from the Cornish coast, and about the wives left behind on New Year's Eve, 1972, a boat pulls up to the Maiden Rock Lighthouse with relief for the keepers. Yada da 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 da. Okay, So as you can see, it's this kind of mystery, but I feel like this is not the kind of book that brings discussion to a book club, in my opinion. I mean, we'll probably be discussing how well we think the author actually wrote this adaptation of a real live event into a mystery format. But I mean, I don't know. If anybody's read this one, comment below and tell me what you thought. I just was like, okay, I don't really care. But if I have to read it, I have to read it. It's, you know, I'll get over it. Okay. Next on the list, I have The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Okay, this one, when I saw it on the list, I was like, oh, hell no. I don't know. It just sounds like something that is kind of gimmicky, and here again, not something that's that interesting to discuss in a book club. But yeah, I mean, gotta do what you gotta do, right? The description says, Patricia Campbell's life has never felt smaller. Her husband is a workaholic. Her teenage kids have their own lives. Her senile mother-in-law needs constant care, and she's always a step behind on her endless to-do list. The only thing keeping her sane is her book club, a close-knit group of Charleston women united by their love of true crime. At these meetings, they are as likely to talk about the Manson family as they are about their own families. One evening after book club, Patricia is viciously attacked by an elderly neighbor, bringing the neighbor's handsome nephew, James Harris, into her life. James is a well-traveled and well-read, and he makes Patricia feel things she hasn't felt in years. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, okay, so you can see how that's going to go. I don't really care. I hope we don't have to read that one. That's all I got to say. Next on the list, I have Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Okay, I don't have to describe that one. Everybody has read that one, except for me. I haven't read it. I wouldn't mind having to read that one. I have it here, I think, somewhere. But I wouldn't mind reading it. I did see the Amazon adaptation, and I thought it was very good. But then I haven't read the book. But I thought the adaptation the movie part was really good. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to describe that one. Okay, next we have The Soul of a Woman by Isabel Allende. Okay, it says, as a young woman coming of age in the late 1960s, she rode the second wave of feminism. Among a tribe of like-minded female journalists, Allende for the first time felt comfortable in her own skin as they wrote with a knife between our teeth about women's issues. She has seen what the movement has accomplished in the course of her lifetime, and over the course of 3 passionate marriages, she has learned how to grow as a woman while having a partner, when to step away, and the rewards of embracing one's sexuality. Okay, so this is one of those books that you can actually see a female book club actually discussing and bonding over. But I distinctly remember there being a little bit of disinterest for this book at one point. So I'm not really sure how well that one's going to do. But it would be something eventually that I would maybe want to read, but it's not a priority for me. Okay, next on the list I have Outlawed by Anna North. Now, Anna North is a writer that we have already read in this book club. We read a book called The Life and Death of Sophie Stark, and I think we read that maybe 3 years ago, I think it was. And we got some really good discussion out of it. I think it was a book that some people really, really liked and others liked less. But I was thinking Outlawed would be a kind of interesting book to read. I haven't seen very many people discuss this particular book, but I feel like this could be something interesting. So it says, in the year of our Lord, 1894, I became an outlaw. The day of her wedding, 17-year-old Ada's life looks good. She loves her husband and she loves working as an apprentice to her mother. a respected midwife. But after a year of marriage and no pregnancy in a town where barren women are routinely hanged as witches, her survival depends on leaving behind everything she knows. So when I read that, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I want to read this, you know. So it'll be interesting to see if the others are interested in reading this one as well. I really love the cover of this book. I just find that very interesting. So yeah, so that's that one. Next on the list, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Okay, now, I never thought that we would ever have a V.E. Schwab book on our book club list. But, you know, here we go. It's here. Now, this book, I don't know anything about it because V.E. Schwab is not somebody that is on my list to read ever. But, you know, here it is, V.E. Schwab. I know, though, that this book is quite popular on TikTok, on Bookstagram, and on BookTube. So, here we go. When Addie LaRue makes a deal with Devil, she trades her soul for immortality. But the devil takes away her place in the world, cursing her to be forgotten by everyone. Addie flees her tiny hometown in 18th century France, beginning a journey that takes her across the world, learning to live a life where no one remembers her and everything she owns is lost and broken, existing only as a muse for artists throughout history. She learns to fall in love anew every single day. Okay, so you either really like this kind of concept and want to see it play out, or you don't care. I mean, I don't know. All right. Next on my list is Clementine, The Life of Mrs. Winston Churchill by Sonia Purcell. Do I really care about Clementine? Not really. But I did read somewhere that it's an interesting look at some people who have some deep-seated issues with raising their children and something else. So somebody who did not like the personality of the Churchills or something. But yeah, I'm just sort of like, not for me. Next on the list we have Sugary Bane. You guys know what I thought about this. I talked about it in my BookTube prize video. So this is a story of a young boy who is the last child in the family and who is hell-bent on supporting his alcoholic mother at all costs, even to his own detriment. And yeah, it's a very sad book, but it's a very well-written book. And so yeah, it could be a really interesting book to discuss in a book club situation. So who knows? Okay, next on the list we have a book called Common Ground. When I went to look it up, I thought, okay, maybe, who knows? Its description is, it's a lonely life for Stan at a new school that feels more ordeal than fresh start, and at home where he and his mother struggle to break the silence after his father's death. When he encounters fearless, clever Charlie on the local common, all of that begins to change. Charlie's curiosity is infectious, and it is Charlie who teaches Stan for the first time to stand on his own 2 feet. But will their unit of 2 be strong enough to endure in a world that offers these boys such different prospects? So, you know, I don't know. Sounds a bit nondescript to me. I'm not really sure, but I've heard a few people say that this book is really good. You know, I don't really know. I'm not that good with Japanese literature, so who knows? We will see. The next book on the list is The Committed by Viet Thanh Nguyen. Okay, now, with my book club, we did read the first book together, which was called The Sympathizer. And I want to say, I think as a whole, people thought it was an interesting novel. I would say half really, really liked it. And I think the other half thought it was a good novel, but thought there were parts that were really difficult to get through because it was maybe it was a chunky, you know, full book. But who knows? Maybe the commitment, the second part of this novel, will intrigue us. It says, the long-awaited follow-up to the Pulitzer Prize-winning The Sympathizer, which has sold more than 1 million copies worldwide. The Committed follows the man of two minds as he arrives in Paris in the early 1980s with his blood brother Bon. The pair try to overcome their past and ensure their futures by engaging in capitalism in one of its purest forms, drug dealing. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much what that's about. Next book on the list we have is The Darkest Child by Dolores Phillips. Now, this is a book that has been on my personal TBR for like eons. I mean, it's been on there a minute. Okay, so I don't know. I just know you got to get your mind right for this one. You got to get your mind right. That everybody tells me that. That's probably one of the reasons why I haven't read it yet. Because it's it's going to be a tough one. The description. Parkersfield, Georgia, 1958. 13-year-old Tangi Mae Quinn is the sixth of 10 fatherless siblings. She is the darkest skinned among them and therefore the ugliest in her mother Rozelle's estimation, but she's also the brightest. Rozelle, beautiful, charismatic, and light-skinned, exercises a violent hold over her children. Fearing abandonment, she pulls them from school at the age of 12 and sends them to earn their keep for the household, whether in domestic service in the fields or at the farmhouse on the edge of town where Rozelle begs local men for money. This one gonna be hard. Like, gotta get your mind right. All right, next book on the list is White Teeth by Zadie Smith. Now, I read this book years ago, but you know, I could probably do for a reread of that book. It's been a minute. Like, I read it when it came out, and it came out like what, in the year 2000, I think. That's 21 years ago. I'm good for, I need a reread of this one. Okay, White Teeth is a 2000 novel by the British author Zadie Smith. It focuses on the latter lives of two wartime friends, the Bangladeshi Samad Iqbal and the Englishman Archie Jones, and their families in London. The novel is centered around Britain's relationship with immigrants from the British Commonwealth. Okay, now, when I read this book 21 years ago, I loved this book. I thought it was really, really done well. But I'm due for a reread because it has been 21 years. So I would love reading it with my book club. But for some reason, I don't think they're going to be feeling this one or really wanting to read it. That's just a feeling I have. I just don't think they're gonna vote for this one. And I think it's already been on our list once before, and it got like maybe 3 votes or something like that. Okay, next on my list we have a book called Valentine by Elizabeth Wetmore. Now, this was one of my TBR books. I have not read this one yet, but I hope to read this one at some point this summer. This book, I have a feeling, is very, very good, even though I hear you got to get your mind right. But I feel like this is a book that could be interesting because the writing I hear is very good. This was on Leonard Pitts Jr.'s list of books to check out by women. And he thoroughly enjoyed this one. He thought it was very, very well written. And the story was very well constructed. So it'd be great to read this one as a group. But I suggested this one. But I don't think anybody's going to really be checking for this one. Next on the list, we have Middle England by Jonathan Coe. I suggested this one as well. This is, the country is changing and up and down the land, cracks are appearing within families and between generations. In the Midlands, Benjamin Trotter is trying to help his aged father navigate a Britain that seems to have forgotten he exists. Wilson London, his friend Doug, doesn't understand why his teenage daughter is eternally enraged. Meanwhile, newlyweds Sophie and Ian can find nothing to agree on except the fact that their marriage is on the rocks. So I thought this would be interesting to discuss, since a lot of the ladies in my book club are, you know, from the UK. And this talks a lot about sort of like the rift and in thought and in social economic ideas, Brexit, etc. that's been going on. So it's very similar to the US divide. Well, the UK has their divide as well. And that's what this book discussed. So I thought this one would be something interesting to read. But I have a feeling it's still fresh. So the ladies might not really want to talk about it, but I'm not really sure. All right. Next on the list, I have The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. Now, this one, I have heard quite a lot about this one. And, you know, but I haven't heard about it particularly on Bookstagram or on BookTube. I've heard about it like from reading about it in journals and magazines and stuff. So I have a feeling this one is going to be a bit of a sad one, but I think it's going to be a very well told story, I think. It says Cyril Avery is not a real Avery, or at least that's what his adoptive parents tell him. And he never will be. But if he isn't a real Avery, then who is he? Born out of wedlock to a teenage girl cast out from her rural Irish community and adopted by a well-to-do, if eccentric Dublin couple via the intervention of a hunchbacked redemptorist nun, Cyril is adrift in the world, anchored only tenuously by his heartfelt friendship with the infinitely more glamorous and dangerous Julian Woodbead. At the mercy of fortune and coincidence, he will spend a lifetime coming to know himself and where he came from, and over his many years will struggle to discover an identity, a home, a country, and much more. So I have a feeling this one's going to be quite the read, and I think it's going to be a fun read, and I think it would be something that would be interesting to discuss in a book club. So I would be quite happy to read this one. Hopefully it will get chosen. Yeah. All right, next on the list we have Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Okay, I think everybody knows this one. African classic. We all have it. I mean, maybe a lot of people have already read this one. I know I've read it at least once. I was supposed to reread it earlier this year, but could not find my copy. Found my copy 1 month after the book, after the group I was supposed to be reading it with. But I think that this one is one that could be good to discuss as well as a group, and I would not mind at all rereading this one. Things Fall Apart is a debut novel by Nigerian author Chinua Achebe, first published in 1958. It depicts pre-colonial life in the southeastern part of Nigeria and the arrival of Europeans during the late 19th century. And I think this is the first book. I think it's a series of 3 books, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me in here if I'm wrong. So yeah, I think that would be something that would be really interesting to read as a group. Will it get picked? I don't really know. I'm not too sure. All right, the next book on the list is Unorthodox by Deborah Feldman. Okay, this book, I'm like, I don't really care. I don't care. I saw the Netflix sort of mini series they did from this book, Unorthodox. And yeah, it was interesting. But then I learned later on that Deborah Feldman, she lied, embellished a little bit her story, so it's not all true or something like that. yeah, I just, I don't really like reading these kinds of stories, but it's the basic thing is Deborah Feldman is a young Jewish girl, and she has to get married, and she gets married to a young guy, and you have a lot of you see what marriage is like for her with this guy. But then eventually what happens is she runs to Europe and takes up with some young musicians and stuff. But I think the main part of the story is about the customs, the Jewish customs and things like that. And I kind of already know this stuff because I lived in Egypt, very close to Israel, so I heard all about that stuff. And I did see the miniseries. I don't really feel like reading the book, so I'm be in trouble if we have to read this one. I'm be in trouble. All right. The next book on the list is Rue by Kim Thuy. All right. Now, this one was gifted to me a while back. This is a book that was originally written in French because Rue Thuy is Canadian. And this would be a translation that we're reading. The person that gifted me the book, it was a English translation that they gifted me. I guess you can say that it's the third one because Unorthodox is also based on truth as well. So this will be the third nonfiction kind of book. I don't have any thoughts either or. I don't know. I mean, I have the book, so even if I don't read it with my book club, I will eventually read this book. I know this is a very slim book, but I think it's interesting because I think her origins are going to make the story a worthwhile read. Okay, next on this list we have Homeland Elegies by Ayad Akhtar. Okay, so this is a book that I've heard quite a lot about all over the place. And he is a Pulitzer Prize winning author, so that's going to make the book probably more in the vision of people in my book club. So it says, Pulitzer Prize winning author Ayad Akhtar forges a new narrative voice to capture a country in which debt has ruined countless lives and the gods of finance rule, where immigrants live in fear, and where the nation's unhealed wounds wreak havoc around the world. Akhtar attempts to make sense of it all through this lens of a story about one family from a heartland town in America to palatial suites in Central Europe to guerrilla lookouts in the mountains of Afghanistan, and spares no one, least of all himself, in the process. So I have a feeling this one is going to be an interesting read too. And I can actually see my book club actually voting for this one because, yeah, this really does delve into some of the areas in which we are, thinking and, see being discussed on the news and things like that. So I think, yeah, this could be a really good one. All right, the next one on the list is Early Morning Riser by Catherine Haney, I think it is. I never heard of this book before, but it is a book that, I don't know how recent this book really is. Let me just check that. Okay, the description says, Jane falls in love with Duncan easily. He is charming, good-natured, and handsome, but unfortunately, he has also slept with nearly every woman in Boyne City, Michigan. Okay. Jane sees Duncan's old girlfriends everywhere, at restaurants, at the grocery store, even 3 towns away. While Jane may be able to come to terms with dating the world's most prolific seducer of women, she wishes she did not have to share him quite so widely. His ex-wife Aggie, a woman with shiny hair and pale milkmaid skin, still has Duncan mow her lawn. His co-worker Jimmy comes and goes from Duncan's apartment at the most inopportune times. Sometimes Jane wonders if a relationship can even work with 3 people in it, never mind 4. 5 if you count Aggie's eccentric husband, Gary. Not to mention all the other residents of Boyne City who freely share with Jane their opinions of her choices. But any notion Jane had of love and marriage changes with one terrible car crash. Child, that's a mess right there. You know, I don't know. I don't see us voting for this one. Who knows? Who knows? All right, the next one is The Other Daughter by Lauren Willig. Okay, I've never heard of this book before. So this is another one that's a surprise on the list. Don't really know much about it. Okay, it says, raised in a poor yet genteel household, Rachel Woodley is working in France as a governess when she receives news that her mother has died suddenly. Grief-stricken, she returns to the small town in England where she was raised to clear out the cottage, and finds a cutting from a London society magazine with a photograph of her supposedly deceased father, dated all of 3 months before. He's an earl, respected and influential, and he is standing with another daughter, his legitimate daughter, which makes Rachel not legitimate. Everything she thought she knew about herself and her past, even her very name, is a lie. Okay. Now, that one as well sounds like something that could be either extremely good or a total flop. Yeah, because these kind of books are never like in between. They're always like extremely good or flops, in my opinion. So, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure I would vote for this one. This looks like something I would just sort of, you know, maybe want to listen to or something just to fill some time. But, I personally don't really care about it, you know, and I don't see that one actually getting voted on. Okay, next we have The Story of a Brief Marriage by Anouk Arid Prakasam, something like that. Okay, this is a book that has been on our book club list at least twice already, and it still doesn't get any votes. And this lady keeps suggesting the same damn book, and nobody keeps voting for it. So I'm suspecting that this time it will be exactly the same. I think the last time it was on the list, only 2 people voted for it. It says 2.5 decades into a devastating civil war, Sri Lanka Tamil minority is pushed inexorably towards the coast of the advancing army. Amongst the evacuees is Dinesh, whose world has contracted to a makeshift camp where time is measured by the shells that fall around him like clockwork. Alienated from family, home, language, and body, he exists in a state of mute acceptance, numb to the violence around him, till he is approached one morning by an old man who makes an unexpected proposal that Dinesh marry his daughter, Ganga. Marriage in this world is an attempt at safety, like the beached finishing boat under which Dinesh huddles during the bombings. As a couple, they would be less likely to be conscripted to fight for the rebels and less likely to be abused in the case of an army victory. Thrust into this situation of strange intimacy and independence, Dinesh and Ganga try to come to terms with everything that has happened, hesitantly attempting to awaken to themselves and to one another before the war closes over them once more. Okay, so that's that. No, I'm not that interested. So, we will see. And last on the list we have, which is book number 26. So, a lot of books. The last book is called Checkpoint by Jean-Christophe Ruffin. And that one is a French book which is, from what I understand, it takes place in Bosnia, I think it is. And it's a woman with 4 men, and they're driving towards a city in Bosnia, and each man divulges some secret about themselves to this woman. And they're heading towards this checkpoint, and I'm assuming that what they tell her is important for what happens later or next in the story. I guess it could be good. I don't know. I don't feel like reading it though, but that's just my opinion. So those are the 26 books that are on my book club long list. Comment below and tell me what you think will pop up, or what you would like to read, or if you want to guess what you think I voted for. And yeah, let's discuss the list. It's pretty eclectic this year, I must admit. I wouldn't say that there are a lot of titles that are jumping out at me, but I feel like it is a very interesting, eclectic list all the same. I will be back with the final 7 that have been chosen for next year's book club. You will get that at the beginning of next week. So that's all I have for you today. Let's chat about it and look for another video very soon. Bye-bye.